Last time on Let's Play Mega Man X4 in the Zero playthrough, he's turned into a proper Jedi. Boneless, Raging Gecko, Revert, 10 Koopa, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age, Acid Drop. My art is a jungle, I guess. Kickflip. The developers are praising uproars and hoo-ha's. Double kickflip. Rock you, hoo-ha. Spine transfer. Because if someone throws a Koopa shell at you, I'm running out of Tony Hawk moves. It's like they were written by internet edgelords. And now the conclusion. As a great man once said, ain't no Planet X coming cause ain't no space cause ain't not globe Earth. So how are we going to space? I mean, it doesn't really matter, we are anyway. This is the Mississippi King though, welcoming y'all back to the finale of Let's Play Mega Man X4 in the Zero playthrough. And in the last episode, we went to space, or the spaceport, and cleared the remaining Mavericks, and fought the Colonel, and unfortunately he died. So in this episode, we're of course going to beat the game, but first we have to face off against Iris. So let's do that. This scene, by the way, that's coming after the fight, I'm actually not going to do a countdown of the top 5 plot holes because there is really just one. Iris.
So you fought with my brother.
I'm sorry.
Then it's over. Everything.
Wait, Iris. Listen to me.
Goodbye, Zero.
Iris. So, this makes her really upset. As you'd expect, since, she just lost a brother, but this fight's actually pretty easy.
Forgive me, Zero. Stay with me, brother. Okay, I'll do it.
Because, Zero's method of attack, maybe this would be harder as an X, because, his attacks don't circle around you or things like that. But it's pretty easy to beat this fight. So that's about it for this fight. And what's interesting though isn't so much the fight, but the scene that follows, because it is quite infamous. Because the voice acting in this game, it's not great already, but this is certainly a low point for this game's voice acting. It leaves a lot to be desired, let's just say. And Iris is basically on the verge of death, and this is supposed to be a real emotional moment for Zero, but the voice acting just kills it. Also, couldn't you just repair Iris? She's a robot. You can do that. Am I a terrible person for thinking this? I mean, maybe, but the game never really seems to address why she can't be repaired. And, that's the thing about these stories, they bring that up, that, robots can be repaired, except when it's inconvenient. And, that's really annoying. They managed to repair Zero in X2, so, why can't you repair Iris? Her technology is less unknown than Zero's, so, that's the issue. The excuse for, not being able to repair Zero is kind of understandable, because, his hardware is fairly unknown since he was designed by Dr. Wily, and I guess, only Wily really knows the ins and outs of how Zero works, but, for Iris? No, she's just a robot. Also, how exactly is a nation only for Reploids a fantasy? They never really explain that. You can't just, say that without, offering any reasons as to why that is. And it's they don't really actually address the Repliforce's arguments, which just makes for a story that kind of feels inauthentic. It also feels inauthentic because, again, they have this nasty tendency of introducing characters that you're supposed to care about in the game that you're supposed to care about with, like, zero build-up. And it's like, that makes it hard to get invested in this game's story. And the plot holes, of course. Those are kind of serious. It's just not a very good story. Anyway, now it's time to fight the General. At last, the final boss, I presume. Heh heh heh. I hope he's not a fake out. I mean, what am I saying? Forget I said anything, it's all just a misunderstanding. That's it. Nothing more.
General, many died because of you. Those lives are on your conscience. Independence always has a high price. What about Iris? Did you forget her? I have no regrets. Come on, Zero.
My fate is sealed. I have no choice. Show me your true power. It was our destiny to fight.
This series, fake out villains, that's never gonna happen. That's completely ridiculous. But anyway, this fight is pretty easy. It's slightly harder as Zero, but not significantly. It's still quite easy. Since, they're communists and whatnot, they decided to just head to space. It's the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism, or so they say. I'm going to breeze through this. This fight is fairly interesting, though. He's actually not the final boss. I was just kidding, of course, but who could the actual final boss be? The way he shoots his fists, by the way, the altitude is based on your altitude. So what I would advise for when he's about to shoot his fists at you is just get on the floor, because that way the top one is low enough that you have enough room to jump over the rings that he shoots at you. So it's not as much of a pain, but yeah, he goes down fairly quickly. There's not much to this fight. It's over, folks! It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! I'm surprised I haven't made more Star Wars quotes given that Zero is a Jedi.
What is this? What happened? No! This weapon can't be working! General, what's wrong? Someone else is controlling it. Then, Earth is in grave danger. It must be stopped. I'll handle this.
Yep, that's right. They built a giant space laser weapon. I'll talk about how stupid this is later, but the song I've chosen is What I'm Made Of from Sonic Heroes by Crush 40. It just seems like an appropriate song for Zero. Plus, after that game, the series kind of lost its edge. So, hit it!
Let me show you who I am and what I'm here for. Here for. Hey! Trying to reach inside of me. Trying to drain my energy. Let me show you just what I'm me show you who I am and what I have in store. In store. Hey, hey, yeah! Trying to reach inside of me, trying to drain my energy. Let me show you just what I'm made of. Simple curiosity, trying to take a bite of me. Let me show you just what I'm made of now. You can take another lifelong try. You can take another try.
It's also fitting because in this game we get to learn a little bit about what Zero is made of. So you see, it all fits together. It all works out in the end, indeed.
Hee hee hee. Good work, Zero.
You're Sigma, so it was you.
Hee hee hee. Yes. Simply brilliant. You even defeated Colonel and Iris.
You made me do it.
No, you wanted to destroy them. Allow me to remind you that I was once the leader of the Maverick Hunters.
Wait, what? Sigma was behind it all this time? Who would have thought? Yep, it's Sigma again. Another fake out. Cause that's definitely not something that got old in the classic series, so clearly it's not gonna get old in the X series either. It's gonna fool people every single time now. In any case, this cutscene and the next animated cutscene after this, these actually have, like, no plot holes, and for as much as I've been tearing into this game's story, and bear in mind it's with good reason that I criticize this game's story, because it is not very good. The parts that involve Zero and his backstory, and how he was a creation of Dr. Wily, that stuff is genuinely interesting. I know I've been mocking this game a lot, but that is probably the best aspect of this game's plot. They introduce the plot thread that Zero is actually a creation of Dr. Wily, and the origin of the Sigma virus. So this game more so kind of implies that Zero was the source, but yeah, Sigma used to be a good guy, and it's implied that through contact with Zero, Sigma contracted the virus, and he became the vector for it. So it's actually kind of interesting that Zero was once a Maverick. Unfortunately, the next game doesn't go into detail with that as much as I'd like, but it does serve to make the plot for X5 much better than this game. It's probably the best story in the X series, in fact, and I actually really like it, and it's in part because this game introduced this plot thread, so to be fair, this game did provide that plot thread, and I do appreciate that. It's actually quite interesting. He's actually really powerful, and he managed to overpower Sigma, which, is a testament to how destructive Zero can be. It's quite ominous, actually. Also, can we talk about how Repliforce just decided to build a giant space laser in their spaceship, and apparently it's big enough to pose a danger to the Earth, and yet this whole ordeal is somehow not about rebellion or insurrection against their human creators. Idiots. Absolutely every single one of them is a complete idiot! You remember that line from before? Yeah. Well, this is it. They are not very smart.
This is neither about insurrection nor rebellion against our human creators.
Because building a giant space laser that can put the Earth in grave danger can't go wrong at all. I see absolutely nothing wrong with this plan.
Zero, you were a maverick?
That question mark is not supposed to be there. That is a typo. Sigma is not experiencing a lapse in memory. This confused me the first time I played it, because I was like, unsure why Sigma was confused about this, because he was the one telling the whole story. Why would you be surprised here? Why are you asking that as a question? It turns out, no, it's not a question. That question mark was not there in the Japanese version, and it wasn't, like, framed as a question. So the strategy for Reaper Sigma is very easy. He's probably one of the easiest first forms of Sigma in the series. It's just like whenever he shows up, use Zero's Ryu engine so that you can like attack upwards and light him on fire, and he can't really damage you. So he goes down very quickly in his first form. The second form is harder, but if you know a few tricks on how to manage it, it can actually be fairly easy, but you have to like kind of watch out. You have to like know what you're doing. The trick is that he throws his scythe twice, once in a circle, and then the second time it can either land on the ground or on the wall. What you want to do is, when he's about to throw it the second time, jump. Jump so that he throws it on the wall, which makes the electricity it shoots out a whole lot easier to dodge. Where he throws his scythe is based on whether you're in the air or not. But yeah, let's actually talk about Sigma's impact to the story. He ruins the whole story just by being here. Basically, they were trying to tell a story with, like, some nuance, and, like, make it not so clear-cut black and white, and then they just completely ruin that by introducing Sigma, because, like, his presence just, like, makes it out that the Repla Force is just unambiguously bad, which, like, completely kills any possible good elements that the story could have. That is not good. That decision to include Sigma just works to the story's detriment in a major way. And I just don't really like that. Sigma just shouldn't be a recurring villain. It was tolerable for Dr. Wily, but in that case, the classic series wasn't even especially story-focused. But in this game, like, because this story plays such a major role in the series, it feels kinda cheap to just have a recurring villain, because that just makes it feel like the storytellers just got kinda lazy and couldn't come up with an original villain. And it really did just feel like Sigma wouldn't be a recurring villain after the first X game, or, well, at the very least, not after X2. And it's like, by doing that, they kind of ruined any impact any current or future villains could have. But anyway, let's actually talk about the fight here. So we're going up against Earth Sigma and Gunner Sigma. Gunner Sigma is obviously the one with, like, the giant laser cannon, and Earth Sigma is the one that either sucks you in or blows you away. It can be fairly easy, but it can also be pretty difficult because it's based a lot off of luck. you kind of just have to get lucky in this fight, and it's kind of annoying. If he keeps doing the attack where he shouts at the end, then, well, you have fewer opportunities to attack Gunner Sigma, and that can be really annoying if, like, he keeps doing that, and you just want to get in some good hits. And plus, with Earth Sigma, it's based off of, like, whether he sucks you in or blows you away. If he blows you away, then you can manage that, and it's easy to avoid getting hit. Not so much if he sucks you in. And it also depends on, like, the Sigma heads and what kind of power they use. Although, to be fair, that one isn't too bad. That aspect isn't that awful. But anyway, for Sigma, I haven't included any additional lines for him. That's because that's for the X playthrough, not for the Zero playthrough. I just felt like adding them for the X playthrough instead of this. We're not quite done with this fight just yet, because we still have to beat this fight without any energy tanks, or heart tanks for that matter. So let's do that. The first form's pretty easy. Of course, like, I can beat this form without getting hit, no problem, whether it's X or Zero. It's the next form is of course a little bit trickier, but it's still not so bad. And the funniest aspect with the third form is that every time Earth Sigma shows up, you're forced to watch an advertising saying, "Subscribe to the Mississippi King if you want to see more content like that," and it's just like, you're the funniest person to try and make that argument, to try to make that advertisement. Because it just seems so weird. And that guy looks really weird as Earth Sigma. So, you know, it's funny. It's just weirdly appropriate. And this fight isn't so bad as Zero. I can actually get through this fight fairly easily. So let's try and get through this. It does take a bit of practice. Also, it takes a bit of luck, admittedly, but still, I hope y'all won't hold that against me. This fight isn't so terrible. It's one of the easier Sigma fights in the series. I mean, aside from some other ones, there are some pretty easy ones. But this one's still before, like, they like got lazy with Sigma fights in a certain other game. It's X6. X6 is garbage. And in X7, the Sigma boss fight is kind of difficult, but mostly because of horrible design choices. I'll talk more about that in X7, believe you me. But for this, it's not so bad, and you know what, like, I think in a few places I have been a little unfair to this game, mostly with regards to the story, because, like, for as terrible as this story is, at least it's not forgettable like X7, because X7 really should have got the memo that less is more, because they really drag out the story like crazy. And it adds nothing, and the cutscenes are boring, and they bring a tear to my eye just how painful they are to sit through. It's agony watching X7's cutscenes. Then in X6, it's riddled with plot holes, which, I mean, this game is too, but, like, in X6, we're talking plot holes so big that it caused a serious issue with the continuity of the series, and basically derailed the whole series into the whole continuity into absolute nonsense because of its weird merger of like two separate endings that it should have been kept separate. But again, we'll talk more about that when we get to it. X6. This game's story is bad, don't get me wrong, it is one of the worst in the series, in fact. But at least it's not forgettable like X7, and at least it didn't, like, completely destroy the continuity. Here, mostly, the main problem with the story is that everyone in the story is just a complete idiot. Not so much that, like, it completely disregards previous entries or things like that. This fight isn't really exciting. I've not really got much to add to it. And you know, even though I do prefer X's gameplay in this game, I do quite like Zero's gameplay. In X7, they ruined even that. But again, we'll talk more about that later when we get to it. Aside from the story, this game really is the peak of the series. And as I've said many times before, the soundtrack is incredible. Like, this is stuff that I used to listen to when editing various videos in the Mega Man Classic LPs. It's just so incredible and powerful. I just think the music is great, and the gameplay is top-notch. There's really nothing like this. This is my favorite in the series, and it holds up really well. But yes, this story had so much potential, and it squandered basically all of it, which is sad. This story had the potential to be the best in the series, and it ended up being one of the worst elements in the series because of all of the very questionable creative decisions made. And that's not even going into the infamous voice acting, which also kills it. And the general just sacrifices himself and acknowledges that he was wrong, which again removes any kind of moral ambiguity that this story could have had. I'm not saying that every story absolutely needs moral ambiguity, but I think that this story in particular needed that, because, like, it just kind of falls apart without it. It's like they try to reduce a complex issue into something simple where it's all just hijacked by Sigma yet again.
I couldn't save anyone after all.
This cutscene once again has no plot holes. It's mostly just the infamous voice acting, of course. And also the enunciation is quite strange in points. Like, this is my fate. I couldn't save anyone after all. It's like, why is that awkward pause there? That's so ridiculous. Anyway, you may be wondering what's the deal with this credits song that I'm playing. Yeah, the Japanese version actually has a different credits theme, and I'm actually playing that instead of the one found in the American version because I'm saving that for the X playthrough. I figured since Zero has like all of the Japanese technique names, and in keeping with like including the Japanese dialogue, I'd also highlight the Japanese credits song, which is woefully out of tone with Zero's story, and feels like wildly inappropriate to play here. Like, it's just so weirdly cheerful. It's a good song, I kinda like it actually, but it just feels like it's a very strange thing to play in this moment. You know, it just feels out of place. Anyway, X4 is a fantastic game. I know I've been criticizing the story a lot in this video, but don't let that distract you from my love of the gameplay, the art direction. The music is, of course, fantastic. It's my favorite in the series. I just like almost everything about this game except for the voice acting and the story. It's a great game, and I definitely recommend it. And to be fair, Zero's story is better because there's at least some connection to the Colonel, and there's the element of Zero's backstory, and it's just made more interesting that way. The next game in this series is worse, but it still has some redeeming qualities. As I've said, the story is actually really good, although we'll get more into the issues with it when we get to X5. It's certainly a step down from this game, but it still has some good qualities. I don't think it's a bad game. I cannot say the same thing for X6 and X7. We'll get to that. Oh, believe you me, we will get to that. Those games are awful. But Zero's gameplay in this is actually really good. It's tons of fun. I don't really like it as much as X's gameplay, but it's still good. And I should point out, it's very well animated, so you know exactly where you hit.
The battle has ended, but for some reason Zero's memories of the past continue to haunt his mind. As a hunter, it is his duty to go after those mavericks, and at the same time, he knows that it is his destiny to defeat his friend one day. Two different people, two different fates. In the future, Zero's decision will lead two great hunters to tragedy. The future is coming.
So, after that, next, I actually intend to showcase the Japanese opening for X4, because there are actually two opening songs depending on which version of the game you're talking about. The Americans got a different opening song and a slightly different scene, and the music is actually different for both versions. Personally, I do prefer the American version, but the Japanese version is perfectly fine too. I like it just fine. However, since this is the Zero playthrough, I figured I'd showcase the Japanese opening here. As for the Japanese voice acting, I've actually played the Japanese version a bit, and I can only assume that it's better than the English voice acting, but I don't actually speak Japanese, so I am not very good at being able to judge that for myself. That is just a hunch on my part. So yeah, we're at the end of our journey in X4, in the Zero playthrough at least, and that's about it. That's about it that we've shown, but there is one thing that we haven't shown off. If you enter the code on screen, then you can play as a new form of Zero, Black Zero, and in this game it's purely aesthetic. There's no gameplay difference between them. In future games it actually affects Zero's combat potential, but not here. Anyways, this will have to be it for this LP. This is the Mississippi King signing out. So join me for X5 next time.